Hi, this is Mike at GameFromScratch, and welcome to week 4 of This Week in Game Dev, recapping all that happened in the world of game dev for the week of December the 13th, 2015. And the truth of the matter is, this is going to be a fairly quick video because not a ton happened. So let's jump right in. We'll do things in chronological order, starting from the beginning of the week. So this week we saw... At the end of last week, Xamarin released Urho Sharp, which was a port of the Urho 3D graphics libraries, or game engine, I suppose would be more accurate. And sadly, they shipped it with a proprietary license that basically said you have to use Xamarin products to use this library, which is sort of a douche move, to be honest, for an open source project to spin off the code. Well, Miguel, the head of Xamarin, came out forward and said, we made a mistake here, and reissued the license as MIT source license for the .NET bindings for the Urho library. So, good move there. So if you're interested in it, it's another 3D option for C# developers to work with. Next up, this one's kind of closer to my heart because Fx Software is based out of the same town as me. In fact, their offices, apparently I learned this week, are above my local Chipotle. Which fortunately is not making everyone sick, unlike the rest of Chipotle's. But Fx Software just released Houdini for Unreal Engine. Now, if you've never heard of it, Houdini is a procedural-based 3D graphics package. It's very much used in high-end motion pictures, and the entire idea is it's very procedural in its orientation. And to be honest, I have tried to use Houdini a few times in the past, and I have never wrapped my head around it. But people that get it love it. So if you're working on a procedural project, this might be the perfect drop-in for Unreal Engine 4. They do have two versions available, like a Houdini full package for around $2 or $3 grand, and Houdini Indie for $100 or $200. So broad range of products. They have a free trial available. You can go ahead and download it, but they have made their software available as a direct plug-in to the Unreal Engine. So that's a cool move there. Probably the biggest news of this week, however, is the release of Unity 5.3. Unity obviously is probably the most popular 3D engine among indie game developers, or even A and AAA developers these days. And this release had a couple of major features. Probably the biggest one is WebGL is now no longer considered a beta feature. It is an actual supported target. So using Unity for web deployment is now a reality. You can get full support on it, etc. The other big news is that Apple TV is a supported target in beta right now, though. Truth of the matter is, though, there's been a lot of stories coming in this week that Apple TV so far for developers is a gigantic flop. So not the market people were expecting it to be, but of course it's very early, so we'll see where that goes. But beta support for Apple TV has just been added to Unity 5.3 in this release. Now on top of that, there's a couple new additions, such as new OpenGL core, experimental support for Metal, which is Apple's version of let's see, what's the AMD... I forget what AMD's version is, and basically now it's all Vulkan. So it's a replacement for DirectX. It's a lower level graphics API, and Metal is iOS and OS X specific optimizations. So Unity now supports them, so it's nice because you can get a free boost on those platforms without really doing any work on your behalf. On top of that, they added in-app purchase support, integrated, I suppose that is, some VR improvements, and some new 2D scene, multi-scene support. It's a big one for a lot of Unity developers. You can finally have multiple scenes that link and open each other. Now, who knows how well it actually works. And finally, MonoDevelop was upgraded. So their version of the MonoDevelop IDE for C# development, they bumped the release version of that one. Speaking of Unreal Engine, earlier with Houdini, they also released Unreal Engine 4.10.1 hot release. Now, the truth of the matter is, I think there's this little tit for tat thing going on, because for every time Epic does something, Unity does something, and vice versa. So I have a feeling it's because Unity did their release, Unreal felt they needed to follow suit, but irregardless, it's a fairly small release, mostly bug fixes, etc., as you see the list in front of you. But that did come out this week. Their major release was actually last week for the 4.10 release. So not a lot in that release, but obviously if you're using Unreal Engine, you're going to want the latest and greatest most of the time. Another neat thing, this is probably a little tertiary to most of you, because this is aimed at kids, but Microsoft Imagine, which was sort of this community built around what was it called, DreamSpark, their kind of game creation suite? Well, it's kind of to get kids into game development through kind of creating a game within a game. DreamSpark's actually kind of a cool program, but I don't know how popular it ended up being. Well, the neat thing is they've started releasing these things for kids. They're half-an-hour lessons. It's basically a combination of a startup project and kind of a PowerPoint presentation of how things work. But what they've done is they've transitioned to using Visual Studio and Unity as their base. But they just released 3 new programs on their DreamSpark site. So head on over to Microsoft Imagine, especially if you are a kid or have a kid that would be interested in learning programming. It's a neat community they're building here, and you'll see these 3 newest kits or games that they've released are specifically for Unity now, whereas some of these older ones like this is a Project Spark project instead. So yeah, it's Project Spark, like you can see here. So it looks like Microsoft Imagine is transitioning their examples, etc., over to Unity, which makes sense. It's probably the biggest mass market thing, although I don't really know if Unity is the most kid-friendly software out there, but that's neither here nor there. Now, another thing that happened in the news is Blend for Web, a Russian-based company that makes a middleware layer, sort of a game engine / web player that enables you to use Blender as an authoring environment and run the end result, be it a game, a scene, whatever, in your web browser. Kind of a neat project. I haven't used it too much, but they've got an Xmas contest going on right now, where first prize gets $500 and 30% off Pro, second prize is $300 and 20% off. The details are all available here. You have until January 10th, 2016 to submit, especially if you're already working in Blend for Web or you're looking at checking it out. Give this a look. You do have to submit your blend file and textures, etc., and under CC license in order, or Community Commons license to be eligible. But if you're working with that anyways, it's a chance to win some cash or a discount off your license. Next up, probably the big guy this week. I'll finish on that. So another one that happened was Corona. Makers of Corona SDK, a mobile Lua-based cross-platform game engine, 2D-based cross-platform game engine. They were recently purchased by Perk, and since that announcement, this is their very first announcement, and that is of the beta release of Corona Ads. Sort of along the lines of Unity has an ad that you can use within the Unity engine, and they take care of all of the back-end stuff, selling of ads, and you can seamlessly make money that way. Well, Corona has the same thing going. So it's a good opportunity for Corona developers to make money, and it obviously kind of shows a bit of an insight into how Corona and Perk are going to be monetizing in the future. So that program just entered beta. You have to apply for it if you're interested. If you are, go to ads.coronalabs.com. Probably only of interest if you're actually working with the Corona SDK, but that one definitely happened. And then the final bit of news this week was the update of the Atomic Game Engine. Atomic Game Engine is, Euro 3D keeps getting a lot of mentions lately, but it is the commercialization of the Euro 3D game engine. And basically, they've built their own tooling on top. And if I had a biggest fault when I actually reviewed Euro 3D, which I did, if you go into the Game Engine's guide, you'll find a link to it from about a year and a half ago, is the tooling was ugly and horrid and bad. And kind of gross. Like it worked, it was functional, but it needed a huge, good layer of polish. And essentially, the Atomic Game Engine port of it is a lot of that polish. It's that nice commercial layer on top of it. And they've got some very friendly pricing going on. Well, they just did a pretty major update. There's new binaries available, an update of what's going on in that world. So there's been a number of changes to the functionality, etc. And then another neat thing they did, sort of an unrelated announcement, is anybody that is from a contributing project can get a lifetime free license. So that's kind of cool. So if you work on Euro 3D, for example, you can get a license for Atomic Game Engine completely free. If you work on Tiled, which works in is part of the suite, or will be part of the Atomic Game Engine suite, then you are eligible. Probably Box 2D or any other kind of libraries that they incorporate, they're giving free licenses to contributors to those projects. So might be the first time this has been done. I'm not entirely certain, but it's a classy move. It's sort of like the opposite of what Xamarin did with their Euro Sharp bindings. So it's a cool move there. So if you're involved in any of the projects that Atomic Game Engine is built upon, you should get in contact with them because you have access to a free pro license. So neat move there. And that basically was it for this week in game development. Not a ton of announcements, and I have a feeling with us getting closer and closer to the holidays that next week's video may actually consist of welcome to this week in game development. Nothing happened. Have a Merry Christmas. See you later. So we'll look forward. We'll find out if that's the case. But this week we had enough to justify 10 minutes of conversation. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope you found that useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe. Do this every week. Even if nothing happens, I do this every week. So far, knock on wood, haven't had to do that yet. But as I said, next week might be that week. So see you then. See you later. Bye.